Hello everybody, this is 2022 December, and in this demo I'm going to talk about what we will cover in our CSAT classes for reading comprehension section. I am Meenakshi Tiwari. I've been teaching at Lukmaan IAS for 10 years now. We started somewhere in 2010, and 2010 was one of the first years, in fact the first year when UPSC CSAT was introduced. English section had just English passages, which meant that there was no Hindi translation, and in that year we also had decision making questions, around 8 questions. But as time progressed, there was a demand that a lot of people still don't understand just English, so it should be more balanced out. So eventually UPSC understood what students wanted, so it came with a little bit of moderation, and then we started getting translated passages as well for every passage that was there in the question paper. But 2010, when UPSC started, one had to be meritorious enough to do the entire test, all the 3 sections and every question. Some people who then had prepared for other examinations beforehand, say like CAT or such other examinations, they sort of seem to have an upper hand. Why? Because, there were people who scored 180 out of 200. However, there were a lot of students who were core humanities students. So these students did not prepare for the other exams, and hence it kind of looked unfair to these students to prepare for CSAT in that kind of competitive scenario. So UPSC came out with another criteria, which was making it qualifying. And when it became qualifying, what happened was decision-making questions were now out of scene because they were still relatively easy to handle, as you had choice between 1 and 2. You can choose either of the 2 and you can still get some score. But then when it becomes qualifying, it has to become a little trickier, and year by year, that's what UPSC did, made it more analysis based. So today when you look at UPSC CSAT reading passages, it is just not about reading a text and answering questions. Unlike in other exams, it appears that you can just go there, read the passage, know enough English, and answer those questions. Of course, practice is something that is required for every test, but what is different about this exam, which is not found in other exams, is it also wants you to have some general knowledge so that you can apply that knowledge through current affairs, through newspapers, whatever you've absorbed, you can use that knowledge in that paper, which also goes to say that yes, of course, not everything is going to be there right there in the text, in the passage. You have to connect the dots using your existing knowledge or using your analysis power, analytical power. So in these classes, I feel obliged to be the facilitator of this course for all of you. I just recently watched a video by Zakir Hussain, the popular artist, and he talked about that a teacher doesn't teach, it's the student who learns, and oftentimes it's the student who inspires a teacher to teach. So I kind of felt that yes, that happens to a lot of us. Every student who comes to prepare for this exam already has it inside them. It's just that, when they come to the class, we facilitate a discussion on various aspects of cracking this exam. And in that process of churning, whatever is the best in that student comes out automatically. I think that is why there's a program like this, there's a course like this. We have in all 8 classes programmed, and it is not exactly a crash course because we are starting way ahead already in December. So you have a lot of time to prepare. English classes will be scheduled for Sundays, in which I'll give you some work, let's say, something to do on your own, reflect on your own in terms of passages or some material. And you see on the board over here, program overview. Take a minute if you'd like to read it. I'm going to take this part up in our first class, which is our first main orientation class. These are going to be my expectations. And we'll conduct a small survey. So if you're attending a class, I'll give you 3 words: assumption, inference, and natural corollary. And I'm taking them very lightly. We're just playing with these words here. When you look at this demo class, you watch this video, your assumption is you need to prepare, and there is some strategy which can help you prepare. And after having watched this video, your understanding is that yes, there is something useful that we can benefit from by attending these classes. So dharana is like assumption, which is the hidden premise. We already have conceived a notion about something. And inference is what we conclude. And natural corollary is, if you like it, if you find it worth it, you'll be part of those classes. So there are some words that are apparently scary to begin with, or maybe if they're not scary, they're just a little bit puzzling. We're going to talk about all these words that are part of these classes. I would want you to be reading current affairs at the same time. For example, when you saw G20 images, you saw the Prime Minister holding a gavel, something like a wooden hammer. But is that the logo of G20? If it is not, then what is the logo of G20? If you know that it is lotus. So this is very preliminary. General studies, it may help you more. But when you come for CSAT English classes as well, for your comprehension is understanding of the passage. You would need some knowledge. And we'll be discussing a little bit of all that which is required to prepare for this exam in our classes. So G20 actually has this symbol, which is the lotus, is the logo of G20. And what else? Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. Now that we have our India in the scene, one earth, one family, one future. So a little bit of general knowledge is always important. I'm recording this video on 13th of December, and just when I thought to come here and make a video, I was reading an article that I chanced upon, and the article looked familiar to me because I've been facilitating this course for years. So when I see a news article and I know that I've done a passage like that before, I bring that article to the class, especially the latest article that I feel can give out the next passage. So somewhere I was reading that what a good teacher does is not just to tell a student where to see, but where to look. So I will be trying as a facilitator to help you understand how to look and where to look for what could be possibly the source of your reading passage. So when I read Curbing Individualism in Public Health. Now, there are times I don't read newspapers because I have other areas also. I now work for a think tank also. At the same time, I teach English language too for Cambridge products. So there are times I don't read newspapers, but these classes sort of inspire me. Students inspire me. There are students who've been asking me to make small videos to supplement this main course. and I make small videos to supplement this main course thanks to COVID and thanks to, the 4 R's, which is reading, writing, arithmetic, and algorithm. I read about that thing just today. Algorithm in the sense COVID made this algorithm possible, which is all of us came online, and I'm talking to a camera right now, so you can understand this process helps the teachers, the facilitators also come up with ideas, and definitely it is the student who inspires a facilitator or a teacher to come up with ideas. So I additionally, in addition to the main course, help you with a few videos that you can go through when you're free, 5 minutes, 9 minutes. I call it Mera Desi Swag, Meenakshi Tiwari. You can look for those videos. But these are the classes where we're going to have interaction. I don't have this interaction with you anywhere else right now. This is exclusively happening at Lukmaan CSAT classes. And so this article, when I read today, Curbing Individualism in Public Health, I was wondering, how is this individualism related to public health? What is it going to talk about? Are we talking about being selfish? Are we talking about being self-centered? Are we talking about being individual focused? Now, if I just let you read the entire article in my class, I'm going to definitely give you the source too, so that you can go back home and research it further if you would like to, and understand how the paper setter's head operates, how a question is formulated. If I just leave this article up to you or give you a lot of time in the class, my class may get lengthy. So what I do is, and with the help of some students who are very active, there are sometimes students who are really, really active. So we kind of mark some keywords together from articles that can possibly give us keywords or a passage for another year, this year or 2023 next year, which is, or 2024. A lot of times passages have a common theme. So what also becomes important for all of us is to know what are those most important themes that this exam is going to test us on. And why the exam? What is the rationale behind this? The exam wants us to be aware of certain common themes, which are like, the most important concepts. So we're going to have those themes also running in the background of our class, so that we know what passages, and interconnecting those themes and having those passages focused on common themes like health, economics, environment, and within these themes also we have further subcontext or subheadings that also come again and again in this paper. And if we are already familiar with how those themes are structured in passages, or what is the tone of that passage, or the author in the context of that theme, or the subcontext, we can actually read that passage faster, and we can also come to a conclusion as to which option will be possibly the best option. You may have noticed there are directions that says the most important and rational, or the most crucial and logical and rational assumption or inference of this passage. Why is there something like this in the direction? Why are there so many words like most, logical, rational, and logical? We're going to talk about those words also separately in our classes, but those words are there because all options could be equally valid. However, we have to choose the most important option that is solution oriented for the benefit of society, for the benefit of public administration, the job that you're seeking. So so we together pick up a few words, for example, curbing, and I'm going to soon after this article, which is just published today, which has been just published today, run you through the passage related to it, which appeared in the paper 2021. So there is this propagating individualism has always been characteristic feature of consumerist society. Why have I highlighted has always been? Because even the tenses matter, timeline matter. If you see a sentence has always been, it kind of gives you out a message that it has been going on. It is not something that is going to start, or it is not that something that was totally in the past. It is something which is ongoing. Plus, words like, of course, always, very important indicators. We're going to talk about which extreme words may give us an option that can be ruled out, or from the passage, if they happen to be part of the passage, are going to indicate where our keywords are in the option. So, a failure to examine and interpret public health problems from a population perspective. This is obvious for problems such as this. What are individualistic or individualist solutions such as micronutrient supplementation and food fortification? Why are we talking about it? Plus, there is a parallel example, a similar context of chronic diseases control, wherein early diagnosis treatment is the most popular solution with little scope. So, what are we talking about here? And what is the meaning of the word little scope? Is there any scope? Even these words like a little, the little, may be differentiators, may give us an indication. Little scope, almost no scope. If you're just looking at providing individual requirements, these solutions, then the tone of the passage says there is a problem. And what is the problem? That can modify health behaviors through organized action. This article has put that in the bracket, but actually that is part of the main theme. Community-driven action or community action is required to look after public health well. There is a strong tendency in public health to prioritize individual-oriented interventions over societal-oriented population-based approaches, also known as individualism in public health. So strong tendency means they tend to. It doesn't say always. If there is a question which says public health always prioritizes individual-oriented interventions, we can't choose that. Most of the times we will choose that. Why? Because there is only an indication of strong tendency. There is nothing like always. Always was in the context of a subcontext. What is the subcontext? Consumerist society propagating individualism. And the passage appeared because a lot of people were buying masks. We all were buying masks. We were buying gloves. We were buying all those things that helped pharmaceutical industry also flourish. And we were made to believe sanitizers were very important. And of course, they are important to some extent, but there was a kind of panic created in the market because of consumerist society. Now, this dot that I'm connecting here is because I read those articles because I was part of this pandemic, and so were you. So your ability to think on the spot and also use your existing knowledge is going to matter in this paper. So similarly, we will talk about the latest articles because this is a small demo orientation class. So I'm going to just run you through the style that we are going to use. Not that this class is meant for you to absorb everything in one go. You can pause if you like, but I'm not giving a lot of explanation right now here. What I'm helping you understand is the way we are going to go about reading certain important articles. And if you were curious, the entire focus has been on the success story that every individual is protected from hospitalization and death achieved through. So there were certain schemes started by government, if you would remember, that people could get health insurance up to 5 lakhs, some families. So this article actually covers how certain government policies were not advantageous. However, when you see a passage in the main paper. That's not going to talk about, that's not going to criticize government, that's not going to talk about the, main points from the article. That's going to give you a very generalized text, and that generalized text would expect you to connect that text with something you've already read. So general knowledge in that context is very, very important. Health effects are more visible and appear convincing at the individual level, wherein improvements at the population level will be clear only after population level analysis. So maybe you can read this article on your own, and when you come to the first class, then we'll together break this down. I'll give you a passage, and I would want you to solve that passage based on your existing knowledge of the article, or I'll give you some time in case you miss out on this video. Third, and the most important influence of all, is the market's role and the effect of consumerism in public health practice. So in the interest of the time, I'm running this page a little faster, but this is how we're going to go about it. And now, the passage that appeared possibly in 2021 had these parts. A social and physical environment riddled with poverty, inequities, unhygienic and insanitary conditions generates the risk of infectious disease. Hygiene has different levels: personal, domestic, and community hygiene. Then we're going to talk in these videos as to how we look at the structure of the passage. Are we going to look at the first line, the last line? Then can we compartmentalize a sentence into different parts and notice where the commas are, where the colon is, and but the entry of the market. Now you see here, in this passage, you're not going to read the word consumerism, but the fact that you may have read it somewhere else, you can connect what is consumerism and what does it mean by entry of the market. And then this was, on the basis of the passage given above, the following assumptions have been made. So assumption is hidden reason. For example, if I tell you, there's a statement like, because I quoted Zakir Hussain, now let's take an example from classical music. Everybody who gets trained in classical music becomes a popular artist. Statement number one. This is a fact. Statement is a fact. Second, or statement can also have judgment, but here this is what you have as in form of a statement. Statement number one: everybody who trains in classical music becomes a popular artist. Statement number two: let's say I use my name or Zakir Hussain's name. Right, let's say I use my name. Meenakshi trained in classical music. Meenakshi got trained in classical music. So what do you think is going to happen? Everybody who trains in classical music becomes a popular artist. Meenakshi got trained in classical music or learned classical music. What's going to happen? How are you going to connect the dots? What's going to happen next is going to be your inference. Anuman lagana. You're going to infer from what is given and draw a conclusion which is not given. How are you going to connect the dot? If everybody who gets this training in classical music becomes a popular artist, and Meenakshi took her training, then what's going to happen to her? She's also going to become a popular artist. That's your inference. What is an assumption? Because the question is asking for assumption. Now let's look at the assumption statement. Everybody who trains in classical music, everybody who gets trained in classical music becomes a popular artist. Statement number one. Statement number two, Meenakshi became a popular artist. You have these two statements. Outcome is given. Conclusion is already given. Meenakshi became a popular artist. What made her a popular artist can be drawn from what is given in the first statement. Everybody who gets trained in classical music becomes a popular artist. So your assumption is, oh, she became a popular artist because she also took training in classical music. That is your assumption. when you find the hidden premise, the hidden reason, which has to be true in order for conclusion to be true, you have an assumption. So this question says, on the basis of the passage given above, the following assumptions have been made. People who are obsessed with personal hygiene tend to ignore the community hygiene. People who are obsessed with tend to ignore. This is a very flawed statement. We're going to talk about it more in details in our first class if required. I'm just giving you an orientation, an idea as to what all and how all we have our classes here. Emergence of multi-drug resistant germs can be prevented by personal cleanliness. We are talking about community hygiene, something, the tone of the passage is not in the favor of personal cleanliness or personal hygiene or individualist approach as much as it is in the favor of community-based approach. So, probably will think this is important, but not as important. In GMAT type of questions, we kind of also have which of these options strongly support the idea or weakly support the idea. Some of those question types are also there in UPSC CSAT. I will cover as we cover our classes. So the answer to this, in our actual class, you'll get some time. I'll give you the passage in advance so that you've read it, or immediately before the class starts, you've read it, and then we discuss, and the discussion goes on. But from this discussion, what I showed you was there are going to be passages every year which are going to give us some concept, and that concept may get repeated. Not the same passage, but a similar article. Questions may be different, but if we already are familiar with the concept, it will be easier for us to read that passage faster and also conclude faster, because people who read it for the first time are puzzled. Are we going to talk about personal hygiene? Oh, that's very important. Or because what I've read in newspapers, because what is going on in the public discourse, I am aware that we are talking not about personal hygiene, not about individualist approach, but about community-based approach, group approach, population-based approach. So the rhythm, the tone, what's going on, the vein, the pulse of the public and the public discourse is very important for us to capture. Also, what is also important is what I do is I dig in further. I found out where these articles are with the help of students. A lot of times students are very helpful in this context. A lot of times students come up with, okay, this passage was part of this article. Some of you have that algorithm even faster for me. So somewhere I was reading, 3 hours were required earlier in 1990s for children to be successful. What were these 3 hours? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now, this digital times that we're living in, the 4th hour that's important is algorithm, which means we should be friendly with the use of the internet, using the right resources on the internet, and I would want students to participate equally so that we collaborate together and classes are facilitated in a fashion that suits the need of that batch. So every year we have a new batch, new classes, because we have new students and they have new needs, and some of them have new talents also, whether it is about searching the internet, or some of the students now are already prepared. So each of you has a different cycle and each of you has a different requirement. Based on that requirement, you will pick what you need. And some of you may need just a few classes, some of you may want to attend all the classes, and some of you may want more material. And I'll pile up these notes as classes go by based on the demand of the students. Every year, there are different students. It's a heterogeneous class. And people come from different areas of study. Passage 1, okay, so that was 2020 and this is just giving you a glimpse. So we go through a passage, best implied in the passage. I also discuss a source and how in that source there were some sentences, but in the actual passage those sentences were missing because we were required to know about that topic beforehand. So yeah. And after we have discussed passages, what we do is this is going to be part of our first class. Also, make notes of a few tips that we gathered from that discussion collectively. Students and facilitator together, learners and facilitators together. So, look at the timeline using your knowledge of tenses. We'll be locating also mind mapping as to why a particular option could be easily eliminated based on English grammar, based on vocabulary used, or based on our general awareness of the topic. Solution-oriented approach, universal principle cannot be neglected. For example, there was a passage, digital economy is not compatible with the idea of not violating the citizen's privacy. This is a very open statement. Digital economy is not compatible. We do not know, does it say is never going to be compatible? Can we do something about it? Can we bring in some regulation? So when we have such generalized statements, we understand that may not give us the answer unless that generalized statement is part of the main passage. For example, the first article that I showed you where it said that individualism has always been emphasized in a consumerist driven market society. So yeah, so we're going to have this discussion in our classes on what to avoid, and I will also give you some terms, some vocabulary which is required in the context of a particular theme, economics or science and public administration especially, and how to look at those words, because I remember sometimes what happens, people who've just started or who perhaps people who have not gathered so much of vocabulary required for the paper, they happen to get puzzled, here and there. Like somebody would say, I remember a discussion in the class where somebody was really confused about sustainable supply of water. That person understood sustainable supply of water as water as a permanent source, as a permanent resource. Not that water crisis can happen, but what we were trying to look at was sustainable supply of water means supplying water in a way that it keeps happening and there are not interruptions or... So the context may differ. We will talk about it more in detail. And of course, if you ever need more details, I will also help you with the YouTube watch for any supplementary topic required to complement the course. Yeah. Okay, and they're going to be passages from current affairs. And then they're going to be always tips in every lesson, every class. All right. So the 8 classes that are scheduled, I'm sure you have the template for those 8 classes, what topics we're going to cover in each class, and every class will conclude with a small feedback which may be in form of suggestions from students as to what to cover, what more to focus on. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to be handling type of questions, rationale behind, relevant discussion on techniques like speed reading, a glance over handling short and long passages, a review of questions based on inference, assumption, corollary, conclusion, critical thinking approach, previous year's papers, and range of topics at glance. If you like, it can be in English, Hindi, English, both. It depends on who you are. So the class depends on who the learners are. With that, I'll close it here and wish you the very best, and trust that we're going to be part of the same session, collaborating together and coming out with more logical conclusions. Towards the end of the lesson, I'll also come up with a compilation of notes as to what we learned. It could be in form of a book exclusively for the learners who attended the lecture. Take care. See you.
The first step towards achieving your dreams is having the right coach. Get the best education with Lukmaan IAS and make your UPSC dreams come true. Download the app now.